the girl's tiny voice begged, her muffled cries echoing through the cold, empty room as the evil stepmother's cruel hands dragged the scissors across her fragile scalp. Tears streamed down her face, mixing with the blood that trickled from the newly shaved patches where her hair once grew. She clutched at the remnants of her hair, trembling and sobbing, her pleas for mercy drowned out by the harsh, mocking laughter of her tormentor. "Please, don't," she whimpered, voice trembling with fear. Her little body curled up in a desperate attempt to shield herself from the next blow. But the stepmother's eyes were cold, merciless, devoid of any compassion. With each stroke, she stripped away more of the girl's identity, her innocence dissolving with every strand she lost. The girl's fingers clung to her scalp, desperately trying to hold on to what little dignity remained, but it was slipping away, just like her hope. Starving and forsaken, she had been left in this dark, silent room, abandoned by everyone who was supposed to protect her. Her stomach growled loudly, a cruel reminder of her hunger, while her little limbs trembled from exhaustion and fear. She begged for food, for love, for someone to save her from this nightmare, but only silence answered her. The shadows seemed to close in tighter, mocking her suffering, as if the darkness itself was rejoicing at her pain. The punishment had been relentless, beatings, neglect, the coldness of a heart hardened by cruelty. Her tiny hands reached out, desperately grasping at the empty air as if to find a lifeline, a sign that someone cared. But no one came, just the relentless, unforgiving silence, broken only by her sobs and the faint scrape of the scissors as they continued their cruel work. Her cheeks were streaked with tears, her voice hoarse from crying, begging for mercy that would never come. "Please, I'll be good. Just don't take my hair," she whispered, her voice barely audible. Yet the stepmother's face remained expressionless, her eyes cold and unfeeling as she continued her mutilation. The girl's heart pounded painfully in her chest, each beat a reminder of her helplessness. Suddenly, amid her suffering, a faint glimmer of something divine pierced through the darkness. A voice, strong and full of authority, echoed through the room, an unmistakable sound that seemed to shake the very foundations of her torment. It was a voice she had never heard before, yet somehow, it felt like a beacon of hope piercing through the shadows of her despair. "Stop!" the voice commanded, loud and unwavering, ringing with the power of truth and righteousness. The girl's trembling eyes widened in shock, her sobs catching in her throat as she looked toward the source of the sound. The stepmother froze, her hand mid-air, the scissors trembling in her grip. The room seemed to hold its breath, waiting for what would happen next. In that moment, everything changed. The darkness that had consumed her was interrupted by a divine presence. Something greater, something unstoppable. The girl's battered spirit, already battered beyond recognition, flickered with a fragile hope. Her trembling hands reached out as if to grasp that hope, her eyes filled with a mixture of fear and awe. As the voice continued to shout in righteous fury, the shadows seemed to recoil, retreating from the light of justice that was now shining into her world. The horrifying act of cruelty was about to be challenged, and a new chapter was about to begin. One that promised redemption, salvation, and the possibility of a brighter tomorrow. The storm was only just beginning to gather, and the girl's story was about to take a turn she could never have imagined. The little girl had been through so much before this moment, her life a heartbreaking series of neglect and injustice that no child should ever endure. Born with a disability that made her fragile and vulnerable, she depended entirely on the kindness and protection of those around her. Yet, instead, she faced abandonment and cruelty. Her parents, once supposed to nurture and care for her, had long since turned away, overwhelmed by their own problems or perhaps indifferent to her suffering. Her mother, a distant shadow in her life, had left her in the care of her stepfather and stepmother, people who saw her only as a burden or an obstacle to their happiness. The stepmother, a cold-hearted woman with no patience or compassion, had grown increasingly hostile over time. What was once a semblance of civility had dissolved into outright cruelty. She resented the girl's presence, her disabilities making her inconvenient and difficult to manage. It was easier for her to ignore the girl's needs than to confront the discomfort they caused her. But as frustrations mounted, her cruelty turned darker. The girl's stepfather, a man caught between his own apathy and helplessness, had become numb to the suffering around him. He rarely intervened, often choosing silence instead of confrontation, perhaps out of fear or resignation. The girl's biological mother, distant and detached, had long abandoned her emotional connection, leaving her to be raised by those who saw her as an obstacle rather than a child to love. The girl's days were filled with neglect. Her basic needs, food, warmth, comfort, were often ignored. She was left alone for hours, sometimes days, with no one to hold her or listen to her cries. Her small, fragile body was often left cold and hungry, her only solace the faint hope that someone would notice her pain. Her disability made her vulnerable to mistreatment, and she was frequently ignored, pushed aside, or punished for things beyond her control. One day, her stepmother grew especially angry. Perhaps it was frustration over her own life, or a moment of pure cruelty. She decided to punish the girl, an act of petty cruelty that would leave scars far deeper than the physical. With cold, callous hands, she seized the girl's hair, which was already thin and neglected, and began to shave it off, ruthlessly, mercilessly. The girl begged and cried, clutching at her hair as her scalp was exposed to the cold air, her voice trembling with fear and pain. She begged for mercy, for her hair to be spared, but her pleas fell on deaf ears. Her tiny frame shuddered as the scissors cruelly snipped away her identity, her innocence, her sense of self. In her helplessness, she was left to cry alone, abandoned in that dark room. Her hair gone, her spirit battered, her body trembling from hunger and fear. Her suffering was a silent scream into the void, ignored by the adults who should have protected her. The injustice of her situation was overwhelming. The neglect, the abandonment, the cruelty, all piling onto her tiny shoulders until she felt completely forsaken by the world. In this moment, she was just a child, broken, trembling, and lost, her innocence stolen away. And yet, amid the darkness of her pain, a divine presence was about to intervene. The moment had been building, and something greater than her torment was about to unfold. A voice, full of authority and compassion, was about to shatter the silence, shining a light into her despair and challenging the darkness that had consumed her. The little girl's days blurred into a never-ending nightmare, each moment darker than the last. She was repeatedly thrown out of the house, her small body tumbling onto the cold, unforgiving ground. Her fragile frame, already weakened by neglect, shook as she desperately tried to pull herself up, only to be shoved away again with harsh words and cruel laughter. Each time she was cast aside like trash, her hope diminished, replaced by a deepening sense of helplessness. The stepmother's voice was a constant barrage of insults, calling her useless, a burden, a curse. She screamed at her for every perceived mistake, whether it was spilling a glass of water or simply existing in her way. Her words cut deeper than any physical blow, embedding scars into her young mind that would never fade. One day, the girl had been denied her simple meal once more. She begged in silence, clutching her stomach in pain from hunger, but the door was slammed shut in her face. Her tiny hands pressed against the cold wood, her tears soaking into her worn dress as she listened to the muffled voices inside, mocking her, telling her she was unworthy of kindness. Her stomach growled loudly, echoing her despair, yet no one cared. Instead, her stepmother returned with a cruel sneer, holding a small, dirty rag to her face, forcing her to clean the floors while her body trembled from cold and exhaustion. The girl's suffering intensified when the stepmother, furious over a minor fault, grabbed her by the hair, her already thinning, neglected hair, and yanked her head back violently. The girl cried out, tears streaming down her face, begging for mercy, but her pleas only fueled the rage. Without warning, she was pushed to the ground, her small body hitting the hard floor with a sickening thud. Blood from her scalp mingled with her tears as the stepmother mocked her helplessness. The worst was yet to come. One day, the stepmother, in a fit of rage over the girl's disability, decided to punish her further. She dragged the girl outside in the freezing cold, and without any warning, she grabbed scissors, those same cruel tools she had used before, and began to shave her hair completely off. The girl cried and begged, trembling as her hair was torn away, exposing her scalp to the cold wind. Her plea for mercy was ignored, her voice choked with fear and pain. The stepmother laughed cruelly, reveling in her power to hurt the helpless child. The girl's trembling hands tried to protect her head, but she was overpowered, her hair falling in ragged patches to the ground. Her body shivered from the cold and the overwhelming sense of abandonment. She was left alone in that freezing place, her hair gone, her dignity shattered. Each time her stepmother's cruelty escalated. More insults, more blows, more neglect. The girl's hope dwindled further. She was denied warmth, food, and love. Instead, she was met with violence, humiliation, and abandonment. Her tiny frame bore the bruises of repeated beatings, her voice hoarse from crying out in pain and despair. Her eyes, once bright with innocence, had begun to dim under the weight of her suffering. She had no one to turn to, no refuge from the relentless cruelty. Every act of violence, every insult, each new humiliation built upon the last, stacking a mountain of pain that seemed impossible to escape. The world around her was a prison from which there was no door, no window, no hope of rescue. The darkness threatened to swallow her whole. And yet, just as her spirit was about to break completely, something extraordinary happened, something beyond her understanding. A divine voice, filled with authority and compassion, suddenly roared into her suffering, piercing through the darkness like a sword. It was a shout that echoed through the very depths of her soul, demanding justice, awakening hope she thought had long been lost. The relentless cycle of torment was about to be challenged by a power greater than cruelty, and the girl's story was about to take a turn she could never have imagined. The cold air cut sharply into her trembling skin as the girl collapsed onto the muddy street, her small body curling into itself in a desperate attempt to find warmth. Her hair, once a fragile shield of innocence, was now gone, shaved mercilessly by her stepmother in a fit of rage. Tears streamed down her face, mingling with the dirt and grime, her sobs racking her tiny frame as she clung to what little dignity remained. Her voice, hoarse and trembling, whispered hopelessly into the emptiness, "Please, someone, help me." But the only response was the cruel silence of neglect, broken only by the distant sound of footsteps that seemed to pass her by without noticing. Her body shivered uncontrollably, the cold seeping into her bones, her tiny fingers numb and useless. Hunger gnawed at her insides with relentless hunger pains, but no food came. Her stomach growled loudly, a cruel reminder of her abandonment. Yet no one turned to see her trembling figure. The world around her was indifferent, a vast expanse of silence and shadows that refused to acknowledge her suffering. She tried to lift her head, to call out again, but her voice was weak, drowned in tears and cold despair. Her vision blurred, and her eyelids fluttered as exhaustion overtook her. Her strength drained, her body unable to hold on anymore. Her breath came in ragged gasps, her limbs trembling from the cold and hunger, her consciousness slipping away into darkness. Her mind was overwhelmed with pain. The physical torment inflicted by her stepmother, the emotional wounds of abandonment, the crushing weight of helplessness. Just as her eyelids fluttered shut, a distant voice, loud and full of righteous fury, shattered the silence. It was a voice she had never heard before, yet it pierced through her fog of despair as if it carried the very power of heaven. "Stop!" it thundered, echoing through the empty street, reverberating like a divine call that demanded justice. The girl's eyes snapped open, her trembling hands reaching weakly toward the sky as if grasping for salvation. Her breath hitched, and her heart pounded painfully in her chest. But she couldn't move, couldn't cry out again. The voice continued, unwavering, fierce. "What are you doing? Leave her be." The words seemed to shake the very ground beneath her, awakening a flicker of hope in her battered soul. But no other figure appeared. No adult ran to her side. The street remained silent, as if no one had heard her cries. The girl's body lay slack on the cold ground, her face streaked with tears and dirt, her tiny chest rising and falling in shallow breaths. She was exhausted, starved, cold, broken. And yet the divine shout still echoed in the air, stirring something deep inside her. Her eyelids fluttered again, her body trembling from more than just cold. She was trembling from the raw pain of neglect and cruelty, from the crushing realization that no one was coming. Her mind blurred with exhaustion, and her body finally gave in. Her trembling limbs relaxed as she slipped into fainting, the darkness closing in around her like a heavy blanket. The world seemed to hold its breath, the silence deafening, as if everyone had turned away from her suffering. The girl lay there, vulnerable and forsaken, her helplessness reaching its peak. She was completely abandoned, no food, no warmth, no comfort. Her small, broken body was barely alive in that moment, her spirit nearly shattered beyond repair. And yet, in that suffocating darkness, a faint, divine light was about to pierce through, something greater than all her pain, something that would change everything. The silence was about to be broken. The suffering was about to meet its divine reckoning. The girl's small body lay motionless on the cold, muddy ground, her trembling frame barely registering the world around her. Her eyes, glassy and hollow, stared blankly at the gray sky above, as if searching for something beyond the dark clouds that hung heavily overhead. Silent tears traced slow paths down her dirt-streaked face, each drop a testament to her pain and despair. Her breath was shallow, each inhalation a fragile whisper of life clinging desperately to her fragile existence. Her tiny hands, trembling and trembling, pressed weakly against her chest as if trying to hold herself together one last time. Her voice was gone. Her pleas and sobs had long since faded into the silence of her suffering. Now only a faint, almost inaudible whisper escaped her lips. A prayer, a desperate plea for mercy, for rescue, for anything to break the endless cycle of cruelty that had consumed her. "Please, God, help me," she murmured softly, her words barely more than a breath, a fragile prayer carried by the wind. She looked up to the sky with vacant eyes, her gaze fixed on the distant, swirling clouds. Her mind, exhausted and broken, begged silently for salvation. In that moment of surrender, her small face was a picture of pure helplessness, her spirit battered but still faintly hopeful. She was a child abandoned and forsaken, caught in the darkness of her torment, yet somehow still reaching out to the heavens. The air seemed to hold its breath, as if the entire world was pausing on the edge of something monumental. The moment stretched into a heavy silence, thick with anticipation and despair. A silent pause that felt like the end of everything. The girl's eyelids fluttered, her trembling hands falling limp by her sides. Her body relaxed into stillness, as if she had finally given up all resistance. It was as if time itself had stopped, waiting for what would come next, the silence pregnant with the weight of impending fate. Her heart, faint and fragile, continued to beat in her chest, a tiny but persistent reminder that life still clung to her. In her surrender, she had become a symbol of pure vulnerability, a child broken by cruelty and neglect, gazing skyward in silent hope. Her tears dried on her cheeks, and her breath slowed to a whisper, a fragile prayer lingering in the air. The clouds above swirled ominously, casting shadows over her battered form, as if the very heavens mourned her suffering. The darkness seemed to envelop her completely, tightening around her like an unbreakable shroud. And just as everything seemed poised on the brink of finality, just as the world seemed ready to accept her silent, broken plea, an extraordinary presence was about to make its entrance. A divine light, radiant and unstoppable, was about to pierce through the gloom. The universe itself seemed to hold its breath, waiting for the unexpected. The calm before the storm of hope. The quiet before salvation. The girl's face turned slightly, eyes still fixed on the sky, her lips trembling in silent anticipation. Her body, exhausted and ready to succumb, was a mere breath away from surrendering completely. Yet, in that fragile moment of stillness, something divine was about to unfold. A powerful, loving voice was about to shout into the darkness. An unmistakable voice that would shatter the silence and change everything. Her silent prayer, her surrender, was about to meet an answer that no cruelty could ever silence. The story was about to turn. The impossible was about to become real. In the stillness of that dark, heavy silence, the sky suddenly seemed to shift. The clouds parted just a little, as if a new light was breaking through a thick curtain of despair. It was as if the universe itself sensed that something extraordinary was about to happen, something that would change everything. The girl, exhausted and trembling, continued to gaze upward, her eyes filled with quiet hope and silent surrender. Her breath was shallow, her body fragile, yet her heart clung desperately to the faint hope that she might not be abandoned forever. And then, as if summoned by her prayer, a gentle, luminous presence entered the scene. It was sudden yet perfectly timed, an answer to all her silent cries. The air shifted, carrying with it a warmth unlike anything she had ever known. It was as if the very atmosphere was being infused with divine compassion, wrapping her in a calming embrace. From the shadows emerged a figure cloaked in radiant light, a figure whose presence instantly commanded attention and filled the space with a profound sense of peace. It was Jesus. He stepped into her view, his face radiating love, mercy, and unwavering kindness. His eyes, gentle yet powerful, looked directly into hers, as if he knew her pain and understood every tear she had shed. His voice, when he spoke, was tender but commanding, carrying a deep authority that silenced even the lingering echoes of cruelty around her. "Come to me, little one," he said softly, his words resonating like a soothing balm that calmed her battered soul. "You are not forgotten. You are loved beyond measure." In that moment, the girl's trembling ceased. Her eyes widened with a mixture of awe and relief, as if the very presence of Jesus had wiped away the darkness that had consumed her. The weight of her suffering, the cruelty of her stepmother, all seemed to dissolve into nothingness in the face of divine compassion. The divine light that surrounded him cast a gentle glow over her, illuminating her face and revealing the raw vulnerability she had carried for so long. But now there was something else, hope, a promise that her pain was seen, her tears heard, and her suffering would not be in vain. The scene was filled with a profound sense of peace, a peacefulness that washed over everyone watching. The darkness that had loomed so heavily was pushed back by the radiant presence of Jesus. His arrival was like the dawn after a long, brutal night, an unshakable assurance that light would return and that love and mercy would conquer all. His gaze lingered on her, soft and full of understanding, as if he saw not just her suffering but the divine spark within her that no cruelty could extinguish. He moved gently toward her, kneeling down, his hands reaching out with tender compassion. His touch was warm, reassuring, and full of hope. "You are precious," he said softly, "and I am here to heal your wounds, to restore what has been broken, to give you new strength. No harm can withstand my love." His words, spoken with authority and kindness, echoed deep within her heart, reaching places that pain had long buried. The crowd around them, silent and stunned, felt their own hearts soften at the sight of this divine intervention. The darkness retreated further, replaced by a shining light of hope and renewal. The evil that had inflicted such cruelty was powerless in the face of this divine presence. Jesus' arrival was a testament that no suffering lasts forever, that no child's cry goes unheard in the eyes of divine mercy. In that sacred moment, the girl's tears turned from despair to tears of relief, her trembling body steadied by the peace emanating from Jesus. The pain, the fear, and the humiliation she had endured suddenly felt distant, drowned out by the overwhelming love she now felt. Her face, once marked by suffering, lit up with a faint, trembling smile. She knew, in her heart, that hope had been reborn, that she was seen, that she was loved, and that the divine presence had arrived to turn darkness into light. And as Jesus gently lifted her into his arms, the scene became a powerful testimony. The greatest strength lies not in force or cruelty, but in love and mercy. The divine had arrived just in time, an answer to a child's silent prayer, a beacon of hope in the deepest shadow. In that moment, everyone watching could feel it. The promise that even in the bleakest suffering, divine mercy shines brightest, bringing peace, comfort, and eternal hope. The moment Jesus appeared, everything shifted. His radiant presence seemed to fill the entire space, casting a warm, divine glow that pushed back the shadows of cruelty and despair. The girl, trembling in his arms, felt a surge of newfound strength course through her fragile body. Her tears, which had once seemed endless and hopeless, began to dry as a gentle calm settled over her. The pain that had haunted her so relentlessly was now softened by the comforting embrace of divine mercy. Her small fingers clung loosely to his robes, grasping at the hope that had flickered faintly in her heart but now blazed anew. The cruel adults, her stepmother and others, stood frozen, their faces draining of color. Their eyes widened in disbelief, their once confident expressions replaced by shock and shame. They had thought their cruelty would break her entirely, that her suffering was unchangeable, inevitable. But now, witnessing this divine intervention, they found themselves silenced, struck by the undeniable truth that they were powerless before such love and mercy. The stepmother's hands, which had wielded scissors and inflicted pain, trembled uncontrollably. Her face, once twisted with cruelty, was now contorted in shame. She looked away, unable to meet the gaze of the compassionate Savior who had arrived to restore what cruelty had tried to destroy. The other adults who had been complicit or silent watched in stunned silence, their mouths opening and closing but no words coming out. They had no defense, no excuse, only the overwhelming evidence that evil could never triumph where divine love had stepped in. The child's trembling body, cradled in Jesus' arms, no longer felt the weight of her suffering. Instead, she felt a deep, unshakable sense of protection, as if a divine shield had wrapped around her. In her eyes, a flicker of hope shone brighter than ever before. Her face, once marked by pain and humiliation, now held a fragile but real smile, one born from the assurance that she was seen, loved, and saved. Jesus' gaze was gentle yet firm, his eyes full of authority and compassion. His voice, soft but commanding, spoke words of reassurance that resonated deeply within everyone present. "There is no suffering that love cannot heal," he declared. "No darkness that mercy cannot overcome." The divine presence radiated outward, transforming the scene from one of despair into a powerful testimony of hope and redemption. The shadows that had loomed over the girl's life receded, replaced by a luminous light of divine grace. Her stepmother and the others, overwhelmed by the truth of what they had done and what they had witnessed, began to realize the terrible futility of their cruelty. Their faces blushed with shame, their bodies shrinking under the weight of divine judgment. They had thought their power was absolute, but now they saw that love, true, divine love, was mightier. In that divine moment, the girl's battered spirit was lifted. She felt strength surge through her, not from her own limited power, but from the divine love that had entered her world. Her trembling arms reached out slightly, as if seeking to grasp the hope that was now within reach. Her eyes, wide and shining, looked at Jesus with gratitude and awe. She knew her suffering had not been in vain. Her silent prayers, her tears, her desperate pleas had been heard. The divine had answered, and nothing could ever be the same again. The scene became a living testament. Cruelty may try to silence, but divine mercy will always find a way to break through even the darkest darkness. The shame on the adults' faces was a silent confession. They had been wrong, and justice had arrived. Their power was empty in the face of divine love. The girl, now wrapped in Jesus' gentle protection, felt the strength of hope coursing through her once more. Her small voice, trembling but full of newfound courage, whispered a quiet thank you. In that moment, everything had changed. The suffering, though real and raw, was now met with divine intervention, proving that love and mercy could triumph over cruelty. The darkness receded, and a new dawn of hope and healing shone brightly, one that would forever mark the girl's heart and the hearts of all who had witnessed this divine miracle. In the aftermath of Jesus' divine arrival, the scene shifts gently to show the girl now in a place of peace and safety. Her trembling body, once battered by cruelty, is steadied by the comforting presence she has just experienced. She is wrapped in a soft, radiant light, her face no longer marked by tears or pain, but glowing with a quiet, renewed hope. Her eyes, once filled with despair, now shimmer with a gentle strength, as if the divine love she encountered has begun to heal not only her body but her broken spirit. The scars of cruelty remain in memory, but they no longer define her. Instead, she stands resilient, restored in her innocence and dignity. The shadows that once clouded her world seem to recede, replaced by a gentle glow that signifies divine mercy and love. Around her, the environment feels calmer, safer, a sanctuary where love has triumphed over hate. Jesus, having fulfilled his divine purpose in that sacred moment, begins to slowly step back, his presence radiating warmth and compassion. His face, full of tenderness, turns toward her with a gentle smile. As he prepares to leave, his voice echoes softly, reaching into the depths of her heart and into the hearts of everyone witnessing. "Remember, my child," he says, "you are never alone. Love is always near, even in the darkest of times. When the world seems cold and unkind, hold on to hope, for I am with you, always." His words linger in the air, a divine promise that no darkness can forever overshadow the light of love and faith. As he gently turns away, his figure becomes a luminous silhouette against the serene sky, leaving behind a trail of divine reassurance. The girl, now standing with quiet confidence, watches him depart with a peaceful smile, her heart filled with a quiet assurance that she is seen, loved, and protected. The scene invites viewers to reflect on the profound message of hope and divine presence. No matter how fierce the cruelty or how dark the night may seem, divine love can reach into the depths of despair and bring restoration. The story reminds us that in our own darkest moments, we are never truly alone, that the divine, in some form or another, is always present, waiting to shine a light on our path. Now, as the divine figure fades into the distance, a gentle question is left lingering in the minds of all who witness. Do you recognize Jesus' presence in your own darkest moments? Are you open to seeing the signs of love and hope that are quietly offered to you, even when life feels overwhelming? Can you find the courage to hold on to hope, knowing that divine mercy is always near, ready to restore and renew? This story invites us to reflect deeply on our own lives. It challenges us to ask if we are aware of the divine love that surrounds us, often hidden behind pain and suffering. Are we willing to open our hearts to the possibility that even in our bleakest times, we are being watched over by a love greater than ourselves? Do we have the faith to believe that hope can bloom anew, just as it did for the girl in her moment of despair? Let this be a gentle reminder. No matter what hardships we face, divine love is never absent. It may come softly, quietly, or unexpectedly, like the arrival of Jesus in that moment of darkness. But it is always there, waiting to restore, to heal, and to bring hope. As we go forward, may we hold onto this truth and remain open to recognizing divine presence in our lives, especially when we need it the most. Because in the end, it is love that has the power to transform even the deepest wounds into stories of hope, resilience, and new beginnings.